Peter Dacos, who joins us later in the program, normally comes in right from the start. Rowan Connolly from the Sunday Age here as well. But Dakes, nice to be back at Vic Park on Saturday.
Oh, terrific, Tim. I think nothing like the atmosphere at Victoria Park, and especially just to be back there and amongst a few of the familiar faces was terrific.
And Rowan, black and white, not really your colours. How do you enjoy going to the home of the Magpie?
It's not a favourite haunt of mine, Tim. I got spat on there once during a press conference about 3 years ago, so it's not a ground I ever attend with any great relish.
There is something to be said for the smaller grounds for atmosphere. I mean, the Bears, which are the Brisbane ground, which the Gab, which only takes 20,000 people, and Victoria Park takes more than that. But those smaller grounds that they get the 20,000-25,000, they're like cauldrons. There's so much noise and atmosphere.
That's the way it used to be. It's great. Always nice to go back. Well, Rowan, the news of the week, only 7 losing coaches rather than the usual 8, and a couple of them perhaps a bit more concerned than the others.
Yeah, well, Fitzroy's Mike Nunan certainly was, Tim. I mean, Fitzroy don't seem to need anyone bagging these days. They've got their own coach to do it for them. He spared no one after their 85-point thrashing at the hands of St Kilda. He basically said the players hadn't earned their money. I thought the most interesting quote was, I think there's something drastically wrong with individuals when they appear to just roll over and die and not give a yelp. Now, would you have ever said something like that to your players, Lloyd?
I would have felt like it a few times. I mean, there's a bit
You
of
had
a problem.
to put up against a wall and shot early last year.
There's a bit of a problem telling players what they already know. And basically, the Fitzroy players already knew they're not much good. Now, Mick Nunan agrees with them.
Well, do you think so? I mean, the only thing they're playing on now is spirit, and there's 18 games to go. That's yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. I think you've got to be very careful of telling your players, if they're struggling, things they already know. I heard something once that the coach has got to be the opposite to the rest of the world. If the rest of the world is really on your players' back, you've got to be there to support them, and vice versa. If they've had a great day and everyone's saying how good they are, well, then you may have to say, well, you know, you've got to put them down a peg. But that's, I mean, they're struggling, and that's really one of those over-the-top things that you just wonder, well, it will achieve.
I think he's big on the climate of fear, Michael, man.
Yeah.
Rowan, Kevin Sheedy, it's a little early in the season for the negotiations to start, but they're in the air already. I wonder if year number 16 could be the last.
Well, some reports had Sheedy's management this week seeking out the Essendon administration to arrange a 2-year extension of his contract, which runs out at the end of this year. I've been talking to a few people around the traps today, and I think that is a bit premature. I mean, I'm sure that the club won't be looking at it in any detail at all until much later in the season. It certainly hasn't been discussed officially at board level yet, and that's during about half a dozen different board meetings already during the season. Look, you know, I think it's unlikely they'd really want to do anything before they see how the season's going to pan out. Now, Essendon were just woeful on Saturday night. I know Sheed said after the game that they usually cop one defeat like that per season, but I think the facts will say that they actually haven't had one anything near that bad since about 1992. I think it's fair to say there are a few pretty worrying signs in that defeat for Essendon. I think it's also probably fair to say that Sheedy's tenure at Windy Hill is probably as precarious at the moment as it's ever been during those 16 years.
And umpiring. We had David Levens here this time last week. He didn't soften you up. You were very critical of what you saw at Victoria Park on Saturday.
I think we should have kept him in for detention all week and made him explain what happened there at Collingwood on Saturday. It was just terrible. I thought the second quarter between Collingwood and Fremantle, probably 30 minutes of the worst over-umpiring I've ever seen in my short years attending the game. It was just terrible. At one stage you had a goal and 2 free kicks awarded between legitimate passages of play. I mean, it was inexplicable. I think 6 of the 10 goals kicked in the quarter were from free kicks, and it just strangled the game as a spectacle. It's certainly knocked the stuffing out of Fremantle. That's not saying that they would have won anyway, but just ridiculous over umpiring. And from what I hear, I think people at the Carlton Melbourne game at Princes Park were just as critical.
Well, let's talk about that match at Victoria Park. It probably didn't produce the sort of football that we really hoped for, but it certainly was a very interesting match between Collingwood and Fremantle. Only the second time they've clashed. They met just once last year. Both of those matches have been at Victoria Park. Not a nice place for a fledgling club to take on the Magpies. We had planned to make mercurial Fremantle defender Scott Chisholm one of the targets of our cameras in isolation this week, and in doing that we picked up more than we had bargained for. When Collingwood applied the pressure in the second quarter, Chisholm found that the Magpies at Victoria Park can be a fearsome opponent. Now we're going to see Mick in action shortly, Lee and Dakes. Has he always been a yapper?
Well, Dates has been out in the field with him, so he'd had a much better idea than I.
I'd say possibly a part of his game that's really come on in the last 2 or 3 years, and it was interesting. It's a part of his game now that is a part of it. I mean, he's really grown on that side of it, and he's taken the same type of tack that Shorey used to sort of use a little bit, psyching players out of it.
This is where the pressure began to be applied. You saw a soft-looking free kick at a ball up in Collingwood's attacking half, paid against Chisholm to McGuan, but this is just the beginning. We've had a look at this. You're seeing it for the first time, and in fact we'll show a couple of the incidents later on in slow motion, but the Collingwood players as a group really putting some pressure on to an extent that we rarely see, I think it's fair to say.
Well, I know after the game that the questions were being asked, were there racist comments directed at Chisholm, and we certainly asked both coaches and Mick McGuan after the game for their thoughts. Everyone involved denied that there'd been anything racist said. We have to be satisfied with that, but I think it's fair to say whatever Mick said to him certainly did upset him.
I think that's dead and buried now.
Yeah, I think what happens in games, I mean, there's a normal intensity that sort of like goes throughout the whole 4 quarters, but it has its hot patches. And you see this as an example of both players. You get the adrenaline's really pumping, and I think that both sides get caught up in it a little bit. And I don't know whether that was an interesting little shot we just saw there. But I don't know whether a lot of things were done wrong. And I think as we watch this vision, I think we'll see some maybe very, very soft free kicks were played, and I think that inflamed things a little more.
Would you say, Lee, that watching Mick in the clips here, would you say he's focused? I mean, he tended to be not focused in on the ball himself. I mean, the thing you told it all.
Yeah. I think it's you can look angry and be controlled, and I would think Mick is controlled, even though his adrenaline's really pumping too.
Could he have gone too far though?
Well, seeing that Collingwood were decided to kick the goals and Mick kicked a few of them, I suppose one has to say he played well. While Mick, to my experience, Mick always plays better when he's really pumped up and looking sort of like aggressive and really expressive.
Chisholm is relaxed as he's attempting to look there, or I mean, is it a natural smile?
Well, I think the thing you've got to be seen to be doing is not letting it get to you as a player. I think once it starts, because the players, if they get a hint of you feeling uncomfortable with it, the players just continue, and he looks pretty relaxed. He seems to have a smile on his face, so but as it turned out, within about 10 minutes, he was off the ground.
Remember the good old days when the backwood used to bully the forwards? Yeah, those good old days.
I think it was interesting after the game, Tim, that we all saw Scott Chisholm as being the centre of people, the Fremantle players being upset. But I know both Gerard Neesham and Gerard McGurl, the football manager, pointed out that they were just as worried about several of the players. I think Dale Kickett was getting very hot under the collar, and they could just as easily have dragged him as dragged Scott Chisholm. They were.
Look at this.
Second incident there with Chisholm bumping pretty lightly Patterson, and it's another free kick. And so Collingwood were given a second shot at goal without there being a centre bounce. And I think there you really see Chisholm starting to look rather rattled.
Yeah, I went too after that.
How about the Collingwood player, McDonald, then coming in as Chisholm was making his way? I mean, a free kick was originally paid for a bump, and then McDonald's come in to remonstrate. So,
well, I think we've looked at this a couple of times, and I think we all felt the initial one that McGuan got was probably a well-acted one, but probably it was there, but Chisholm did give him a shove off the ball. But I think that one there, I think we all agreed there was just nothing in that, and the umpire saw Patterson go to ground and reacted instinctively without being exactly sure what he saw.
This is right in the middle of that passage of play where you had 2 free kicks, 1 goal kicked, and probably about 2 minutes elapsed between the calling of Mick McGuan's mark, which resulted in a goal, and the next actual legitimate piece of play. I mean, the players might as well have walked off the ground.
We might have a look at 2 of the incidents in slow motion. Firstly, the one where Chisholm is penalised for pushing McGuan at a ball up, and Mickey does make every little bit out of it that he possibly can, even down to the facial expression, which was beautifully conducted.
You talk about the control of the umpire there. I mean, shouldn't they have a better control over what is going on? I mean, he seems to be focused more on bouncing it off.
I would think they're always going to pay a free kick in that situation. I mean, Mick certainly went with it. I mean, he may have been able to keep his feet if he'd chosen to, but certainly the initial shove was there, and Mick basically didn't stage, but actually played for the free kick and got it.
Could you push umpires down in a situation like that? I mean, where there's a group of players, especially after a few isolated incidents, pushing the umpires down, because there's an umpire at the top end of the ground really doing nothing. So bring the guy down from the middle to maybe scout or have a good look at proceedings. And then...
Did you notice where he was, for instance? The umpire that's more in
well,
the central part of the ground?
Yeah, I think they're back just inside the square.
Wouldn't have really made any difference on that one, would it? Because the umpire who was bouncing the ball was right on it. It happened right in front of his nose. But there was some discussion about the relative experience of the umpires that were chosen for this match, with umpires Hanley and Williams, who have done very little senior football, and Gavin Dorr is the one experienced umpire. At Victoria Park, Fremantle and Collingwood, I suppose the Aboriginal element, the recent history of things, it might have been a match for a bit more experience.
I don't agree with that. I think every game of league football can have its inflamed situations as that development. Really, I don't think there was anything pre-game that made you think the Collingwood Fremantle game was going to separate itself from the rest of the round to make it a game requiring the best umpires or the most experienced umpires.
I just think, Tim, there's been a few things we've seen already this season which really have worrying implications for the whole season. That is, the Patterson goal we just saw before, when a free kick was awarded without the ball going back to the middle. That's the second time we've seen that already this season. I doubt whether any of us have seen 2 or 3 of them in the previous 10 years. Now we've seen 2 in 4 weeks. That worries me.
Let's have a look at that second one, with Stephen Patterson being bumped not too vigorously by Scott Chisholm, and this delighted Patterson's teammates, who all came in to let Chisholm know that he'd served the black and white rather well. Now, you'll see, as Dakes pointed out earlier, McDonald comes in from Chisholm's right and meets him about as solidly as Chisholm met Patterson in the first place. So if one was a free kick, should there have been a reversal?
And I think Stephen Patterson gave us a fantastic example of buckling the knees and allowing yourself to go to ground. It's a fantastic skill, and many players, many free kicks, and that was not even in general play, but that's it. You receive contact, you buckle the knees, go to ground, and there's always a chance the umpire will seize the movement, and the players will get free kicks.
That's a big part of it now, the exaggeration.
Absolutely.
I don't see how the umpire could have seen that supposed retaliation from Scott Chisholm and paid the free. I mean, there's absolutely nothing in it at all.
Lee, I must ask you, before we go to Tony Shaw's press conference, the racial issue was obviously in the media's mind, and we'll get to that with Gerard Neesham's press conference a little later. Would Collingwood and Tony Shaw be conscious of it? Was it a troubling issue for you as coach over the last couple of years?
Collingwood would be absolutely the last club and their players, the last players to even think about doing that kind of thing. I mean, after the flack that happened last year with those couple of well-publicised incidents, I don't think anyone at Collingwood's going to be stupid enough or hot-headed enough to even think about that. So I'd be positive it was nothing to do with that.
So it was keenly felt in the place, the strife of the last couple of years?
Oh yes, I think the whole, if morality is the correct word, I mean that's what's changed over the last 12 months. I think, what was regarded as maybe gamesmanship, even be it not very savoury, is now regarded as something that players just can't do, and the AFL's made certain of that, and the general, I suppose, public attitude is made certain of that. So I don't think there'll be too many players in league football now that even in the tensest situations would make any racist kind of comments.
Is it something that the players discussed as a group last year when it first emerged on Anzac Day, or is it something that they've had to work out for themselves?
I think more work out for themselves. I can't recall ever coordinating the players group to actually to talk about that issue. It was more an individual thing that happened rather than something that was sort of like a team thing. So again, it just became a lot of things have changed in football over the time I've been involved, the physical aspect rules, and certainly that was one thing that, as I say, the whole morality and what's normal and what's expected has changed.
Well, when the media throng caught up with Collingwood coach Tony Shaw after the match, he was clearly delighted with the results of Saturday's gamesmanship.
You know what Mickey said to stir up the action? No, but I think it was very professional in that if you can turn the ball around from being in their hands or the umpire's hands and get a free kick and kick a goal out of it, fantastic play. And probably very experienced play.
When you said professional there, Tony, do you mean what he said to put off his opponent or what? Yeah,
well, whatever he said, and to turn the ball over, we kick a goal. If I could do that 20 times a game, I'd like him to do it, We're here to win the games, not to make friends.
What did he say to you?
I wouldn't have a clue. I don't know, I went down there to the box.
I think more than most coaches, he would have enjoyed all of that, wouldn't he?
he would have enjoyed having 2 shots at goal without the opposition touching the ball, and almost whatever way you manage that, you're happy with.
Was he travelling well?
Sure, well, they're 2 and 2, so I mean they're like in the whole group of maybe a dozen clubs who are in that category have looked okay at times, but yeah, no, they've done okay.
Well, we'll go to the Fremantle rooms after the match, and with our own Rowan Conley leading the charge, the media throng was very anxious to try and establish the content of Mick McGuan's conversation with Scott Chisholm.
We're a bit were sucked in on a few occasions. I think the immature players sort of reacted to a bit of banter, and then when they end up getting up and kicking it, I thought they were very fortunate. On 2 occasions, I mean a free kick after the event for a goal, and then and I thought a very tough decision against Daniel Bandy, on over the shoulder, which it seemed to me to be shepherding the guy just came in, and so those 2 decisions resulted in 2 goals. But they were definitely much more dominant than us, so I'm not making any excuses, but at the end of the day, instead of being 5 or 6 down and having a chance, you're just too far away from it.
Have you seen umpiring have that sort of influence over 30 minutes of football before? I mean, I think 6 of the 9 goals in the quarter were from free kicks.
Well, I think maybe, I told you I sort of felt, I mean, it was pretty difficult, but I don't think the umpiring was particularly good, but whether that was favouring anyone, I know we ended up on the tail end of the free kicks, but still at the end of the day, I mean, the opposition actually had a lot more of the football. To half time, they actually won the football much more than we did.
Why did your guys get sucked in so badly? I mean, what were they saying?
Oh, I don't know. No, you have to go and ask them.
They're on the bus.
No, fair enough. No, I have no idea, but I mean, they shouldn't react anyway, no matter what. I mean, but that's just immaturity. I mean, they've come to Victoria Park for the first game, and copped a bit of it, from a few experienced players. I mean, you've got the likes of McGuana, who had a great quarter, and Francis and these players. Because he was very undisciplined at the end of it. I didn't really particularly want to take him off in the instance because it's in front of a very parochial crowd. But it was actually not so undisciplined. He just wasn't getting near the football. He was having a really bad day, and I mean, everyone's going to have those. He had a great day last week, and he had the reverse this week. Well, he's got that potential, I reckon, and he definitely can be a bit fiery, and I know that Kiki was also pretty fired up, so I was fairly concerned that I didn't want to see him get 2 weeks.
Around the issue there, was there anything racial in
No, they haven't players haven't come and said that to me, and I don't think that's the case. I think there was just a bit of banter from senior people, or from the opposition possibly, and our blokes got sucked in, so I don't see that that's a criticism of the opposition. To me, it's a criticism of our players. We actually played the ball in the first 15 minutes. We played the ball and got a free kick for being first at the kill, and we didn't after that. That's to me the bottom line of what happened in that sort of 30 minutes.
Was there any long-term anger over what was said, or has it all been forgotten?
No, I don't. I haven't spoken to the players about it. That's not an issue for us. I mean, none of those kids who come to me and come up and said, that's not an issue. I tell you, the issue is at half-time, the statistics say that we had 70 possessions less than the opposition. I think that's the issue for me.
And some more statistics relating to those free kicks that Rowan Conley was talking about. A total of 62 for the day. Collingwood had about 2/3 of them. In the second quarter, 15-6, they kicked 4 goals from frees in the second quarter and 2 more in that term after the advantage rule was invoked from Collingwood free kicks. So Collingwood faring very well on that score, and Gerard Neesham, I think, acknowledging that it had a lot to do with his own team's lack of discipline. But as for the coach, very calm, very straightforward, and pretty impressive, I think, Lee.
I think he's been impressive in his 12 months as an AFL coach. Certainly what the Fremantle did last year with a lot of players we never heard of, or a lot of players we thought weren't good enough and being rejects from the other side. He's got to take a lot of credit for them being a very competitive side so early in their period in the AFL.
And Dakes, you were at Victoria Park to see your old team. A few reflections on the match.
Well, I thought for the first 15 minutes, Fremantle was terrific. 3 goals on the board before Collingwood had scored, and they were using the ball well, but it's no coincidence that the 2 very good wins for Collingwood this year against Melbourne and against Fremantle have been against sides that will chip short and retain the ball. Now, Collingwood are very good at manning up in their starting positions, a little bit like their coach, Tony Shaw, was always next to their man, and They really didn't give Fremantle any time to react. They were terrific and they tackled and they were far more direct. I just felt Fremantle really just chipped it around and held onto it. We're waiting for players to really come from behind, and they just played in the Collingwood's hands. 9 goals in the second quarter, terrific quarter of football, but again, you know, free kicks do help in football, but you've got to be in a position to get them.
And now another blockbuster Anzac Day clash awaits the Magpies. Rowan Connolly will be hoping for a reversal of form from the Bombers. Rowan, thanks for joining us again this week.
Thanks, Nick.
We'll be back with more football feedback shortly, including one of our special guests this week, Richmond coach Robert Walls, coming up.